The Constitution Man, Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
You know, America, there's a gentleman who ran for the Senate last time around against Cory Booker and did very well considering the Republican National Committee gave him virtually no support. It was a grassroots effort in a very dark blue state. And there was a congressional district in part of New Jersey where he actually beat Cory Booker in a couple locations. And so he decided, you know what? This seat's being vacated. I will run in the Republican primary for the nomination in this district, which I won running against Cory Booker, who was very popular. And his name is Steve Lonegan. He's a solid conservative. He's a movement conservative. He would be a wonderful addition to Congress. And so what the Republican establishment decided to do was put a candidate up against him who is a liberal, big spending, big taxing Republican. They put him up against Lonegan, and they're loading this guy up with money. So I decided the primary's next Tuesday. I consider Steve Lonegan a good friend of mine. Here he was, poised, and now they're trying to knock him off. Steve Lonegan, how are you, my friend?
Mark, thank you so much for having me. You truly are the best warrior we have for the Constitution on all of talk radio, Mark. You inspire me with everything you say, and you've helped me to run this race in very, very many ways. What is shocking about this race is my opponent came out of the AIG insurance conglomerate where he made all of his fortune, and in essence is now funding a campaign made with much money that he made through the TARP bailout. You know, AIG was the largest recipient.
Hold on now, Steve. I want the public to understand. We paid for that ridiculous TARP bailout. AIG was one of the biggest beneficiaries, and this guy worked for AIG?
Yes, he did. His company, York Insurance, was a unit of AIG. He will not release his tax returns or even file his health ethics disclosure, which you're required to do under the law, because we'll know all of his money came from the TARP bailout. It's pretty ironic, but let's talk about the real issues, Mark, and where we stand on the issues, because you have spoken constantly about the importance of a primary in defining the Republican Party. And I believe in this district more than any other right now. I support the total repeal of Obamacare, and it should be replaced with the private sector, individual initiative, a civil society where we have charity care for those truly in need. My opponent has stated very clearly that the government has a role in our health care, and in fact, he has called for, and you're going to love this, a health insurance company of last resort for those who can't afford insurance. That is directly out of Hillary Clinton.
Is he not aware of Medicaid?
It's also, he wants to expand the Medicaid as well. So he's called for the expansion of Medicaid and, additionally, a health insurance company of last resort. Mark, that's the very foundation of Obamacare.
Yeah, you're right.
That's Republicans accepting that very premise, and once you accept the premise, you lose. On the issue of immigration...
Let me ask you this before we move on. I'm noticing, Steve Lonegan, that the Republican establishment in Washington is starting to back off of Obamacare, and if they do that, they have no idea what's coming after this election when it really kicks in and tens of millions of people are adversely affected. Why are they doing this?
Because they feel, these big government Republicans, and you've seen this before, that they can run a big government program better than the Democrats. That they'll create some version of Obamacare, and they'll modify it, and they'll say that they tied strings to it, and they have different, but it's ultimately going to be very much the same thing. And that is why it is so important that we elect true conservatives to Congress who are willing to fight, and fight hard, even when things get tough, to repeal this bill in its entirety. And we're going to see this battle over immigration, Mark. My opponent has been endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce because he answered a very important question. They said, will you support comprehensive immigration reform, Chuck Schumer's bill, or not? And his answer was yes. And my answer was no, I will not. So on the issues of amnesty, on Obamacare, on every issue down the line, this is shocking. And you well know, Mark, that Ronald Reagan said in that great speech, A Time for Choosing, do we have the courage to end the immorality of the progressive tax? I have taught and fought constantly against progressive taxation. I support a flat tax. My opponent has openly supported progressive taxation. He has said progressive taxation is okay as long as you do it with the right rates. See, it's that constant pattern. Progressive taxation is okay. Some form of Obamacare is okay. Some form of amnesty is okay as long as we do it the Republican light way, the Democrat light way. And that's why the country is continuing on the path it's on. That's why I'm running for Congress. The establishment Republicans do not want to see a guy like me in Washington, because we will stand up with those other conservatives and fight against all of these big government programs.
Steve Lonegan, what is your website again?
It's LoneganForCongress.com, Lonegan, Lonegan. And Mark, I have over 7,000 people who have donated to this campaign. Over 7,000. My opponent, up until a month ago, had one himself and his TARP bailout money, and now has about 150 donors. We have a major grassroots campaign, just like I had in the Booker race. We have people on the ground, people knocking on doors, people making phone calls. I feel terrific about this race. This is the classic battle, Mark, between the establishment liberal Republicans and the conservative movement. Absolute classic.
Mm-hmm. But you still need more money, so if the nation can help out, you want them to help out.
If I can raise money now, I'll be able to do more TV and radio on Sunday and Monday. My opponent is outspending us 10-1, but we are still, we are still in our polling in the lead. In two recent polls today, actually in the lead. NorthJersey.com and Star Ledger polls have us in the lead. This is a battle. This is like total brutal battle. And I have been endorsed, Mark, once again by our good friend Governor Sarah Palin, which has been a huge boost. And if your listeners could go online to Lonegan.com and donate, I will be able to pump up my TV and radio and really, hit hard coming down the home stretch in the last 72 hours.
She's a great warrior, Sarah Palin. And by the way, you're in an expensive TV and radio market, aren't you? I mean, you really need to raise the money.
It is. We are in the Philly market. There's some New York, but it's an expensive New Jersey, an expensive market. This is an expensive campaign. I don't have the benefit of having made money off of the TARP bailout and AIG insurance to fund a campaign. It's an interesting how a guy like this can walk in and write a personal check for $2 million, but I'm still subject to FEC regulations on what I can raise from a single donor, which is $2,600. So I have to have a couple of thousand donors just to get to his personal loan. And by the way, he loaned that AIG TARP bailout money to the campaign, which means when he gets to Washington, Mark, if he wants to get his loan back, he's going to have to do what he's told. Do what he's told by the special interests and the big boys who can write him the big checks to pay back his loan. So this is all about control, and it's all about the status quo versus the conservative.
And the U.S. Chamber of Crony Capitalism, they're pouring a lot of money into his campaign?
No, they don't have. Nobody's pouring money into his campaign because he used his own money. So I've actually raised a lot more money in terms of fundraising, not as much as he's loaned to the campaign, which was $2 million. I'm just somewhat shy of, I think, $800,000 or $900,000. So I'm being outspent more than 2-1. Plus, he bought the establishment party lines in both counties by writing them big fat checks, but those lines don't mean anything. We've proven that over and over again. So the whole country really should be watching this race, because we very much can define what the Republican Party is going to look like in New Jersey. And if we do that in New Jersey, we do that for the nation.
What's Chris Christie doing, if anything?
Chris Christie has not said a word, but I will say this. His brother Todd donated $2,000 to my campaign.
Oh, really?
Yes, he did. So you have to respect that. His brother stepped right up with a $2,000 check. Last week I got a nice check from Steve Forbes, very much because of my support of a flat tax and my opponent's support of progressive taxation. So I have over 7,000 donors, which is very inspiring to me. And I hope we can improve that tonight through your show, because, to put it bluntly, I'm out of money in the last 3 days. And all
right, America. This is a very, very important race as far as I'm concerned. There was really no reason for the establishment to take on Lonegan here. None. You can hear it, and they can hear you. America can hear you, Steve. They know you're solid as a rock. You've been on here before, and they're already salivating. They think they're going to win this one because of all the money this guy's pouring into the race. But my listeners can help you out. I hope they will. Give out the website again. We're putting it on my social sites, but give it out again.
It's Lonegan, Lonegan, for Congress.com. And Mark, I commit to you in front of the whole country right now that I will go to Congress, and in every decision I make, my number one question is, am I upholding the Constitution of the United States and defending our liberty? That's what America has to get back to, and has to get back to it now.
And is it not amazing, Steve Lonegan, that this is why the Republican establishment wants to defeat you, because you believe in liberty and private property rights and limited government and the Constitution? Did you ever think you'd see this day?
In a way, I've actually seen this going on for 30 years in the state of New Jersey. but it spread to the rest of the country. I mean, New Jersey didn't back Ronald Reagan back in 1980. The whole state establishment was behind, George Bush Sr. They said Reagan was too conservative. They said he couldn't win. That's what they said about me going into this race. They said 2 months ago, Lonegan's too conservative. I don't know what makes me too conservative. I guess
I don't either.
Life. Yeah, I don't know what that means to be too conservative because I want to repeal Obamacare. They've told conservatives in this state for decades, hey, keep quiet, stay in the back of the room, don't talk about being pro-life, don't talk about the Second Amendment, you'll upset the moderates. And don't talk about repealing Obamacare, that's too radical. You need to go to Washington and cut deals with Obama and his people. And that's what's going to somehow appeal to voters. That's not what voters want. Voters want dynamic, strong leadership. Voters across the board want to put America back on track towards American exceptionalism and towards prosperity. And we're not going to do it the way we're doing it now. So that's
just final point, Steve Lonegan. Americans are sick and tired of Congress. They're in very low of approval. They're sick and tired of the federal government. They're sick and tired of big government. And I'm sick and tired of the Republican Party messing up people's messages, trying to smear conservatives, and trying to continue with the status quo. The people don't want the status quo.
No, the status quo is not good enough in everything from military spending into the loss of billions of our tax dollars on wasteful defense budget spending, on Obamacare, on the Common Core intrusion into the education of our children. You know, my wife is a teacher, Mark, you met her, and my daughter Katie is a teacher. Both of them are demoralized because of what the federal government is doing to education. They don't just want to control our health care. They want to control our children's minds through their education systems. We have to fight to take America back and bring it back to what the Founding Fathers believed, and that's individual liberty and the individual responsibility that goes with it.
All right, Steve Lonegan, we wish you well. Now, have a hell of a strong weekend, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Mark. And you helped a lot with this, believe me. Thank you.
All right, you take care. Steve Lonegan, this guy is good. You know, there's a handful of races in this country where it really is a UFC fight, where a little bit of money here and there, a little bit of people who live in these districts and states, a little bit of activism will make a difference, because turning out the vote in these primaries is the key. And this Lonegan race is one of them.